Okay.
Hi everyone, welcome. We're just waiting for a few participants and we'll get going very soon. My name's Julie Street, I'm the Queensland Divisional President and we're hosting the webinar tonight for our Queensland members. I'm going to pass you over to Natasha who will do some quick housekeeping before she introduces Rob. Thanks everyone.
Welcome. So we're here for the setting secondary students up for the future of work. And my name's Natasha Purcell. I'm the Vice President, and you've met Julie, who's President of the Queensland Division. So we're just waiting for a few more people to join us, but while we're waiting, I just wanted to let you know that you're on mute, so we can't hear you. And there is an option for chatting and asking questions and messaging through the chat button that's on the bottom toolbar of your screen. So feel free to use that. Rob will be taking questions partway through his presentation and again at the end if there's time. So feel free to chat and comment as we go, and Rob will get to that as he can. I'm also just wanting to let you know that Rob is actually joining us today from a mobile device. So far so good with our visuals and sound, but just ask you to be a little bit patient if we have any glitches as we go through. So I'm going to introduce Rob. Rob is the Dean of Students at Glasshouse Christian College on the Sunshine Coast, and he runs the DeLorean project, which is a year-long project with Year 10 students which focuses on building capabilities and skills rather than content knowledge. And it's to prepare students for the future world of work. We'll hear Rob present, and just feel free to use that button if you've got any questions as we go forward. So welcome, Rob.
Thank you, Natasha. It's good to be here. Cool. All right. Hello, everybody. I can't hear you, but you can hear me, so I'm told. And Natasha, if you don't mind, I can't seem to see the question box in my screen mode showing my slide deck. So if there are questions or you think we should stop, if you just pipe up and let me know, that would be great. And otherwise, I'll keep going.
No problem at all. And Rob, actually, I do have one more tip just for users of that chat button, just to make sure that it's to all panelists and attendees, so that Rob and everyone can see what you're chatting. Thanks.
Perfect. Cool. All right. Hello, everybody. Thanks for the introduction, Natasha. So one of my roles, my big role at Glasshouse Christian College is to oversee teaching and learning, and so I get to do that with a very dear colleague of mine, Gail Mitchell, who's the assistant head of primary, and we oversee P to 12 together. We have a whole school vision for learning, and so that's really exciting. But one of I guess a passion project, you could call it, is the DeLorean project, and so I get to speak to you today about that. I'm really excited to be speaking to people in the role of managing young people and the careers they may follow. So hopefully what I share today has some meaning for you in your context. I'm going to basically share the journey that we've been on for the last 3 years in this space of developing skills and capabilities. And then I've chosen to focus in on just a couple of frameworks that we use that I would imagine many of you use in some of the work you do with work ed and preparing students for careers and work experience and all that sort of thing. So like I said, if you have questions, pop them in the chat box, and Natasha will at some point let me know that there's lots of questions, and I can get out of my presentation mode and have a look at them as we go. So I thought I'd share some innovations with you as a bit of a starting point. And I'll just quickly explain what these are. You should see some movies happening. So on the far left, that's an online platform that distributes new and used pajamas to children in disadvantaged and underprivileged situations. And so you can go on, you can purchase new pajamas, and those pajamas that then get distributed to organizations that deal with people in need, particularly children in need. In the middle, there is a surfboard that detaches into two pieces, and that's a product that's targeted at mostly non-surfers, actually, or families who have kids who maybe want a surfing experience but don't want the hassle of strapping a full-size surfboard to the roof of the car. You can see that it is a functional prototype. One of our local Sunny Coast surfers is surfing that board at Maroochydore Beach, and then providing some feedback on that product. Next to that is a student who is involved in a program as part of the DeLorean project at the university, and we're talking about discovering brand new species of bacteria in that case that have never been found before, full stop, which is a pretty exciting thing to be involved in as a student. And finally, on the far right, and this is a bit of a mouthful, but I've had a bit of practice. This is an LED cross-contamination, anti-cross-contamination storage system for commercial fridges, where LED light is used to mark shelves a certain color according to the cutting board colors. And so red would be for meat and green would be for veggies. And one shall not mix with the other, especially in commercial fridges when you look at correct food use and processes. So this system allows you to find containers that are stored in the wrong spot, because as you can see by the video there, if a container is stored on the wrong shelf, rather than glowing the color it should, it turns black. And so you can easily see it's in the wrong place, and you can find the right place for it. So all of these innovations came from 15-year-old students in the last 2 years. Their ideas generated solely by them, and then they had the challenge of making them happen. And so if I could transition to a bit of a dare that I've been putting out there in all the presentations that I've had the privilege of doing, this is something that I guess polarizes some people, usually politicians who have a vested interest in the system, not usually teachers. So the dare is, how can we as educators disrupt the current system of education to the point where it actually becomes relevant again? I'm pretty confident in saying that I think that the system as a system is broken. It's one of the only industries that hasn't changed in 150 or so years. And for some reason we keep doing the same thing, which is just a little bit disappointing in my opinion. So as educators, I don't think teachers are broken. I don't think classrooms are necessarily broken, but the system is, and then that obviously governs and constrains teachers who have great ideas, who maybe do want to do something differently. So I guess my question is, where is the critical mass or the tipping point where there's enough educators who actually want change, that change happens? And so that's a big challenge, and it's one that our college has taken on in many areas, particularly this team. And this is the team that I had the privilege of putting together in a few years ago. And we are looking to really show that use of curriculum time for the development of skills and capabilities is actually really, really significant and important. And so these guys are amazing. They've really made the program what it is today, and they are, along with our students in the program, the reason why I get to sit here in front of you and talk about it. As far as why we did what we did, and you'll see what we actually did in a couple of minutes, but as far as the why, this is the why here. This is the research that really gives skills and capabilities the voice that they've been needing for a long time. So if you haven't read these reports, I would suggest, especially in the roles that you folk play, I think you really should. The FYA report is phenomenal. It's really, really great research. It's written really well. It's written in a much simpler form as other reports, so young people actually should have no issues understanding it, and people like me who would like things to be said plainly and simply as well. So when I share this slide deck with Natasha, and she shares it out with all of you, these are all hyperlinked so you can get straight to the report, but of course you could Google any of these. They all take a slightly different angle on skills and capabilities, and they're all brilliant to read. So if you haven't, please do so. But I'm going to guess that many of you maybe have seen at least a couple of these reports. So in 2015, we had a bit of a dilemma. We had 90 15-year-olds, our entire Year 10 cohort at Glasshouse Christian College. A school system, as I said, that is increasingly irrelevant in my opinion. We had a day of curriculum time to do something with, the equivalent of a day. We were doing some work with Apple and the education branch of Apple around visioning and leadership, which was really challenging us. To deal with this curriculum time we needed to do something with, we actually had a number of traditional solutions that we could have used, but I was pretty keen to do something different, and a lot of the reason for that was because I had a mentor who actually dared me to do something different and unique.
What's wrong, McFly? Chicken? Mr. Pop.
That's your official introduction to the DeLorean project. Our vision is there on the screen for you, but I've found a way to simplify it a little bit. What we do is we challenge students every week on a Wednesday. So this program runs on a Wednesday, every week, term time for the entire year. And the challenge is for students to find a passion or interest area to learn in, to find a team to work with, and to find a real problem to solve. So although that's our formal vision that we sort of write up when we produce text, really it's find a passion, find a team, and solve a problem. And so when we've broken down that vision into some concrete goals, the goals were around the team piece and collaboration and what that actually looks like. If you do the research around teams, it's fascinating. Some people laugh at Google, but they've actually probably spent the most money on researching team dynamics and what makes a good team. I think it's probably worth listening to, in my opinion. So we really wanted to look at the team piece and how a program like this could actually leverage learning in team dynamics and roles that we play in teams. So collaboration would be I guess the edge-speak for the team piece. We were interested in creative and critical thinking and the problem-solving piece. And I know we throw those words around as well, but could we actually engage students on a deeper level where they were really forced to think creatively to solve real problems? And we were interested in this piece of engagement in learning. And could we create a program that increased engagement in the learning process? And I guess the vision for that was if we could figure out how to do it in the DeLorean project, where it was very much student negotiated and it was find a passion, find a team, solve a problem, would that interest in learning actually then spread to their traditional subjects, which in our case, our Year 10 students study Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. And so those were sort of our three concrete goals that we were interested in looking at. And the last goal, and probably the most audacious goal that I'm not quite sure how we measure this, but we're working on it, is could we better prepare students for their future? After 12 months of this program, would they be better prepared to enter Year 11 and 12 and their final phase of high school? Would they be better prepared for whatever job they took on, whether that's a part-time job or a full-time job later on? Would they be better prepared for uni? So that's where we were at. And if you haven't figured it out by the video before, yes, it's named after the Back to the Future series and the DeLorean car, the time machine. And all we were looking for was a different, unique narrative that we could base our program on, that we could share with students. Many of them haven't actually seen the movie, so it is a novel narrative. And we just really enjoyed the idea that we could call our program something quite different. And I guess bring back the word DeLorean into, at least at Glasshouse, everyday language. And that's what we see today, is people using the word DeLorean as if everyone uses the word DeLorean. And what better way to create that narrative to actually find one and bring it to the college? So we do that. We try to do that every year. There is a few people that own DeLoreans around the place. And so we try to give students that authentic experience of what an actual DeLorean is like to sit in and what it looks like and what it's made out of, just to, again, increase and enhance that narrative story around innovation, perseverance, trying new things, taking crazy ideas and making them happen. And so that's a fun experience for students. We have yet in 2018 to get the car there, but we're working on it. So we use a framework that we call the DeLorean Spheres to negotiate student learning. I've already sort of alluded to the first sphere around a real problem that needs solving. So as students find a passion area to work in or learn in, we're asking them to basically think about all of the problems that they experience within that area of passion. So if you love motocross racing, well, what's a pain that you experience every day when you're doing that sport, and can you solve that problem? The next sphere is around entrepreneurial mindset, and what we think is the mindset that, someone needs to have to solve a real problem. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. And then the third sphere is around the use of technologies. And in a technology-rich day and age, we feel like students should be leveraging their solutions to real problems using technology in some way. So a DeLorean project only goes ahead once a team has negotiated all three spheres in what they think and how they think they'll achieve these three spheres as they proceed with their startup ideas. What we did in our second year of the DeLorean project is actually map the general capabilities document, which is the national curriculum document that talks about skills and capabilities. In our launch year, we used a framework from the University of Melbourne around 21st century skills that we really liked. And what we did is basically we looked at the national curriculum document and we came up with our own framework for skills and capabilities, the ones that we really felt we could target, explicitly teach and focus on throughout the year. And so you can see we have sort of two areas. We've got creative and critical thinking skills, and then we've got personal and social capabilities. And although I think we probably hit a lot more skills and capabilities from that general capabilities document, these are the ones that we're putting our money where our mouth is and saying these are the ones we definitely can target and hit and develop over the year. Just quickly to give you a couple of key events that happen in our project. So we spend about 8 to 10 weeks front loading our program with skills and capabilities where we explicitly teach and talk about elements of collaboration. We talk about communication. We talk about the DeLorean skill set that you just saw. And I'll talk a little bit about the framework in a minute that we use for that. And at the end of that 8 or so weeks, we're asking students to form teams that they plan on working with for the rest of the year. Now, there is some room for flexibility to change, but it does have to be justified. We don't just let students swap and change for the whole year. At that 8-week mark, they've done enough learning that they should be able to put together a team that will be successful if they're making good choices around the teams they want to work with. We then do a 2-day, essentially like a startup camp, which is an ideation. It's an intensive 2-day. What are all the ideas you have around the problems you experience in the passion areas that you want to learn in? And can you come up with solutions? So you might see startup weekends or startup weeks that are happening around the country. They're happening in all sorts of other countries. And so we've basically taken that same framework for creating solutions to problems. And then the challenge is getting the idea from your brain into something tangible. And so from the point where teams have ideated and come up with problems and possible solutions, they then have 6 weeks to our Shark Tank event. So we just finished this event. It ran over 2 weeks on the 16th and the 23rd of May. And we bring in a panel of entrepreneurs and investors, and every team pitches their startup idea to the panel. And they're actually pitching for real money. They're pitching for mentorship. They're pitching for investment. And they're having to really practice some of those those skills that we've been talking about for the first sort of term of the program. It's really a pinnacle event in the program, and the learning that students do through this experience is phenomenal. If you go on to our Facebook page, and our handle was on the first page, and I'll put it on the last page, or the last slide, sorry. You can actually watch most of the pitches. We streamed it live to Facebook, and so they're still there over those 2 weeks, including the feedback that the panel of entrepreneurs and investors gave each team. So if you're interested in that, you can go back and check that out. I would have loved to actually show you some snippets of some of those pitches to give you an idea of the skills and capabilities that are being developed. But the file format was playing havoc today, and I couldn't get it to work in the slides. So out of luck on that one. But head to our Facebook page at the DeLorean Proj and check that out. Our final event of the year is a showcase. So this is from 2017, where students essentially showcase the work they did over the year. We don't actually care about the startup itself. Some groups do not get to a point where they have a product or an idea that became tangible, and that's okay, as long as they can talk about the journey of learning they've been on. So this is really about assessing and looking at what did you learn about the skills and capabilities that are important for you to be successful. And this is always a highlight. We invite all of our network back, all of the entrepreneurs that have supported us, parents, friends, the community. We were part of Startup Week Sunshine Coast last year. We'll hopefully be a part of it again this year. And so we get all sorts of people coming in, and teams are essentially for the final time pitching their ideas to sometimes strangers, sometimes teachers, sometimes parents, sometimes investors that they've actually been in contact with over the year. Can I point out that this isn't a business course? So when we talk about ideas, we're talking about any idea. It's not something where we're going, you have to market a product. We're saying, what ideas do you have to solve the problems you experience? And really where it becomes a bit of an enterprising thing is we say, if you've come up with a good solution to an idea and people are willing to pay for that solution, why would you not monetize it? And so that's sort of how our program developed. And this year, at this point in the year after Shark Tank, we already have teams working with investors and mentors. And we've had at least one team already start to monetize their idea, which is really exciting for those students at 15 to be able to do that. But I guess our vision and our audacious vision is that for students who come up with good solutions, why shouldn't they be able to have the opportunity to finish high school running potentially $1 million company or a $500,000 company, or maybe it's only a $100,000 company, but nonetheless a successful company that really has just solved a problem and been able to make some money from that. And so we challenge students to think big like that, and we're starting to see that culture shift in our cohorts start to happen, which is great. I want to talk really briefly about another stream of our program. And this is a partnership we have with the University of Sunshine Coast, where we have this year we have 7 students in this program, and it's research based. So these students have a passion for research in some area, and we've actually been able to partner them with a PhD candidate at the university. So every Wednesday, rather than spending their Wednesdays with us at the college, working on DeLorean projects there, they're working on real research under the supervision of a PhD candidate, being mentored one-on-one in that area, having to develop the same skills that students back at Glasshouse are developing. And so you can see some of the projects that have been taken on over the last 3 years. The ones on the left are this year's research projects. So this is proper PhD research. Our students have higher access to facilities than most undergraduate students at the university. And remember, the 15-year-olds. The feedback we're getting is that these students are presenting to academics, to university professors throughout the year and at the end of the year at a level that is far higher than an undergraduate level, and in many cases exceeding a graduate level presentation, which is pretty cool. And I think it just iterates the fact that it's not that young people don't have talent, it's maybe that we just limit their opportunity to show that talent. And for some reason we have this idea that you have to do school, and then once you do school, you have to do university, and then once you do university, life starts and you can get a real job. And I think that's just not the way of the future. I think we should be looking to not this or that, but this and that. If a student wants to go to university for whatever reason, they should be able to do that. But at the same time, why can't they be doing some other things as well that include possibly running their own business, which is pretty exciting. This is a video of one of our students. His name is Vinny, and there's Megan Smith, who's actually one of the lead experts in the crown of thorns starfish. And so Vinny's has this amazing experience of being able to do some research with Megan around novel approaches to biocontrol of this pest. And so you can see this is his first experience actually removing a crown of thorns starfish from a tank. And not many people get to do that, which is pretty exciting. So what have we learned? And then I'm going to sort of talk to you about what we've learned from this program. And then I'm going to talk to you about some of the frameworks that I think would be most interesting to you in the way that we deliver the program and teach skills, and why we teach those skills, or how we teach those skills. So some of the big insights that we have are around the fact that by the time students get to us in year 10, they have absolutely placed the ceiling on themselves. They don't actually believe that they can do what we're challenging them to do. They don't possible, many of them. And we're starting to see a change in that mindset this year. But what we really need to do, and I think this goes back, we can't just do it in senior school. We've got to look at these skills and capabilities in middle school and in primary school. And if I had more time, I could talk to you about how we're doing that, or attempting to do that. But we need to change this fixed mindset that students have, and the ceiling they've placed on themselves, to more of a growth mindset. So many of you would be familiar with Carol Dweck's work in growth mindset. I don't think we can actually blame students, though. I think that it's probably our fault as a system. School puts kids in boxes, and we say you can only achieve certain things at certain ages and stages, and you can't do that till you're in this grade, or you can't do that until you've reached this level. I think we need to sort of flip that on its head a little bit, and we need to maybe give kids more opportunity to show us exactly what they can do. This is a quote from Astra Teller, and I'm going to let him tell you his definition of failure. It's probably the way that we change mindsets, and it's something we don't do in traditional subjects. Failure is not something that we celebrate in math, science, English, humanities. It's not something that becomes part of the conversation, and I think it needs to be. So I'm going to let Astro tell you what his definition of failure here, and then we'll pick it up after that.
Real failure is trying something, learning it doesn't work, and then continuing to do it anyway. That's my definition of failure.
I would say that our school system, our education system, fits pretty well into that definition. We've tried all this stuff before, this new senior system that's coming in, and I know this will polarize people as well, but it's not new. We've done it before. We know it doesn't work, and yet we continue to do it anyways. And I'm prepared to stand and say that and have that debate. But we are not doing anything unique in this new senior system. We are preparing kids for a university pathway to get a score, to get into a program. We've always done that. It's not new, and it's a little bit sad that that's what we've come to in our 1 in 30-year chance to revolutionize education, especially at a senior level. So I must say, I personally am disappointed in that, but I was prepared to challenge the system and work within it to make things better than maybe what they will be, given the parameters of the new system. So other things that we've learned around this program is that a lot of students actually don't know what they're passionate about. And I'm sure you guys probably find this sometimes when you have those conversations around work experience, or what students maybe want to do as possible career pathways. And sometimes I feel really sad for these young people who cannot tell you what they get excited about. Students cannot tell you what they're passionate about or what they're interested in. And so one of our sort of charges in the DeLorean project as facilitators is to really dig deep for those passions and interests, because we found as soon as we find it, teams will and individuals will and really take off in their engagement in the learning process if we can find that passion. So we'll have teams that actually work on something for a whole term, sometimes a whole semester, and it really isn't something they're passionate about. And in some cases, we've found that passion, we've had that conversation, a switch has been flicked, and they'll get more work done in 3 weeks than they got done in 10, which is pretty exciting to see. And then finally, the value that we place on these skills and capabilities is a big thing, and it's an area of concern. There's all this research to say it's important. I would suggest, based on the research, it's actually more important than what we're learning in our other subjects. Content knowledge, yes, it's important. It'll always be important. But there's lots of things that we can learn as we need to. And that's the difference between today and maybe education of, 10, 15, even 20, 30 years ago. Skills and capabilities in that backpack of, I guess, soft skills or 21st century skills or enterprising skills, that's actually what that backpack of skills and capabilities that can be transferable across any context is what's going to make young people really successful. And so it's pretty clear to me that that those skills and capabilities are super uber important, but kids don't value them. Again, our fault. Why? Because we taught them to think that an A on an assignment is the most important thing, or an OP score is the most important thing, or whatever the ATAR score is going to replace the OP. That's our fault. That's our system's fault, that we've placed so much weight on those things that's what they value. The skills and capabilities, they go, doesn't really matter. And I think we'll find that that's going to really hurt young people in the future. What we have found, though, those three insights might seem a little bit, depressing. But in our program, when we've taken some risk and given students the opportunity to really have a go at these things, we've actually found that even though they don't value the skills, even though they might not be able to articulate a passion, and even though they've placed a ceiling on themselves, actually hugely capable. And the 4 examples that you saw at the beginning, that's evidence of how capable young people can be. And we've had teams be offered real mentorship, real investment on their ideas, not our ideas. None of them come from us as facilitators in saying, do this. It's all from the brains of young people. So I might stop there, Natasha, and just, because I'm about to go into a bit of detail around the framework we use for some of the work we do in the front end of the program. Are there any questions there that are worth pausing for? And just
there are no burning questions at this point. So just a reminder, feel free to use chat. Actually, one has just popped up now. So maybe we'll just give people like a minute to pop their questions in if they have any or any comments. So I have, they're coming in fast now. Let me just go through. A question about Rob. Have you found this type of learning and education has had a flow-on effect to students in their home lives and as individuals?
The answer is yes, and that comes from, I guess it's worth telling stories around that. So one example that we've just experienced that probably was one of the highlights of DeLorean project for me was a young lady who pitched at Shark Tank by herself. Now this young lady has serious anxiety. She sees a professional practitioner on a weekly basis, I believe, and is often medicated for that condition of anxiety. And she had this idea to solve a problem that she experiences herself. And so she was able to get up in front of a panel of sharks by herself and actually pitch her idea. And she used media to help with the anxiety that she experiences. So she'd pre-recorded some content, and it was absolutely brilliant. Her ideas around a product that people with anxiety can use to help fall asleep. And so to see this young lady get up and spend 5 minutes pitching her own idea to a panel of entrepreneurs and investors, and then for them to give feedback that was just so positive and encouraging, you could see her self-confidence boost. You could see the way she walked out of the room. And so guaranteed that one experience, I would suggest, possibly change some of what she experiences on a day-to-day basis and how she sees herself. So that's one great example that's literally just happened in our program. But what we do see more and more is that we're seeing translation into other areas. So I show a video of a pitch of a student to the English teacher, and the English teacher goes, there's no way that that's real, that they don't believe that pitch is that student, because in English, they're not communicating that way. And so I guess one of the challenges we then have is, well, can we use that evidence in DeLorean project as evidence in English when we know that they can actually communicate effectively. And maybe we're just not giving them the right opportunity to. So yeah, absolutely. I think we see that translate into their home lives and their other areas of academics.
Fantastic. I have another question from Daniel. He has asked, what specific strategies have you employed to engage those reluctant students?
Those who are reluctant?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenge, and it's a funny thing. Hey, as the one with the vision for this program, I had this idea that if we did this in 2016 when we launched, I thought every kid is going to engage in this. Like, we're going to have 100% engagement, which is totally ridiculous. You know, it's a pipe dream. And what we found is that although, yes, engagement improved, and, you know, where you'd say maybe you've got 20% totally unengaged, maybe 60% in the middle that are somewhat engaged, and 20% at the top that are highly engaged. I think that whole distribution shifts when they're leading the learning, and when they're negotiating their learning, and when they're doing something that they're passionate about. But we still have non-engagers. We still have people that don't believe they can do it. And so it is a battle. It's a challenge. I won't lie about that. And I don't think we've actually figured it out yet as far as the best solution to tackle those students, other than regular conversation around passion and interest, and regular conversation about capability. And often it's because they just don't think they can do it. And those kids don't engage because they don't have the confidence to think they could actually do it. And it's funny, we get one of two things. Sometimes those kids who don't engage are the students who don't engage in academic subjects as well, and that's just their default position. But probably what we found in many cases is that those students actually excel when they get on to the thing that they're passionate about and they realize that they can do it. We find that some of our top academic students actually struggle the most. It's not that they're not engaged in trying, it's just they struggle because they're so used to being told what to do, how to do it, when to do it. They've been taught how to be taught. They haven't been taught how to learn. And so that becomes a challenge for us. If our most academic students can't think for themselves and solve problems and take initiative, they literally, in some cases, some have come to us and gone, just tell me what to do and I'll do it. And our job is to say, no, you figure it out. It's your job to do it. So I don't think we've actually solved the problem of total disengagement. We still have those students, and it's just a weekly conversation that we can have, and a little bit more facilitation of those students to try to get them going.
Nice. We've got two questions, but one kind of feeds into that a bit. Julia has asked, how do you help students discover what they're passionate about? So how are you doing that?
Yeah. Again, I don't know that we have the answer to that. I think it's a lot of brainstorming and it's a lot of conversation. And sometimes it's just, we have a lot of writable surfaces, and often it'll be, if groups are struggling, we'll go, just start, writing down anything that comes to your mind. And they'll just start writing a whole bunch of stuff that they think they might be passionate about, and then we sort of try to work through that and go through the list. And if you've chosen to work as a team for whatever reason, are there commonalities that we can look at? But again, often it's through conversation, and it's through prompting questions. What do you do on the weekend? What do you do? What wakes you up in the morning and gets you excited? What do you do when you get home? And so it's just having those conversations and really pushing students to communicate with us about what they enjoy.
Nice. Another question's popped up, and I'll go to that one before I go back to Mira's question. So Rebecca has asked, what percentage of students don't want to participate and work hard towards achieving the project?
Yeah, so I guess you would understand that every cohort is different. And for us, I think the big piece here that changes from year to year is the culture of what's happening in the school. This year's cohort has heard about DeLorean Project for 2 years now. The first year's cohort didn't. So I would say out of 90 students in our first year, we probably had 4 that were completely disengaged and not interested. another half a dozen that were disengaged, but when prompted, where they were happy to follow along and give it a bit of a go. But it was well under the 20% mark that you would sort of say your normal distribution of engagement might be. In our second year, that was probably a little bit less. This year, I would say it's maybe 3 students at the most that are. I wouldn't even say they're completely disengaged. They're just lost. They're disengaged because they don't believe in themselves and they're not sure what they're passionate about. So, and that's out of a cohort of almost 90.
Nice. And Rebecca said it's really great to hear that level of participation. She was also extended her question in asking if you've seen a change in participation or effort in projects with the increase in screen addiction, screen time.
Oh, I don't know. I'd say maybe there's a screen time factor in knowing what you're passionate about. I don't know that I could really answer that, to be honest.
No worries. I think it's probably participation.
If we find that students are, we've had groups that have explored gaming as their passion. And, so again, it's trying to meet students where they're at and identify if, the gaming industry is a massive, massive industry. If there's problems that can be solved there, then I think we should be really supporting students in exploring those. It's got to be productive, obviously. Yeah.
And sorry, one last question, Robin, and we'll let you keep going for now. Mira has asked, I know you talked about this a little bit at the beginning of your presentation, but how the school timetable makes time for these projects.
So again, there's some decisions there that need to be made. I happen to be the timetabler, so I don't have to ask the timetabler if he agrees with the thinking or she agrees with the thinking, which is a challenge that a lot of other schools would have. So I think that's a real benefit in my case, and that we were really lucky that, I guess I was really lucky that was one of the roles I had. But basically, we made a decision to align our Year 10 program with our senior program, and the way that students choose subjects and the way that we've organised students to be on Spheres and study the subjects they study. So we made a decision to only allow students to study 5 subjects in senior, rather than what a lot of schools do, where students can study 6. We found that a lot of schools had up to 50% of their Year 12 cohort on Spheres anyways, but those were spread across the week. And so that decision was actually made quite a number of years ago, that students would study 5 subjects and they would have a Wednesday to basically do their study for those subjects. And so we had a Year 10 timetable. That our dilemma was our Year 10 timetable didn't lead into our senior timetable. And so Year 10s couldn't get a continuity of subjects from Year 10 to Year 11. And so we didn't want to give Year 10s a study day as well. And so it was, what do we do with that time? Yeah.
Fantastic.
And that was unique for us. Other schools will be in much different contexts, and it's about solving problems within the context that you're in.
Nice. And just a comment from Anne-Marie. She said that she's looking at incorporating enterprise into her career classes in the Year 9-10 level. So you're giving her some great inspiration here.
Cool, great. Well, I might talk about one of the frameworks we use, because I think this will be the most interesting to many of you, if that's all right. And
that sounds good. So keep questions coming, and we might be able to answer those towards the end.
Perfect. So when we look at collaboration and we look at teams, one of the things we identified was that students will be more successful if they understand themselves and they understand how others think, act, behave, and feel. And so we threw around this concept of, should we look at personality typing? I say careers counselors might be interested in that, because I know many careers programs involve some sort of personality typing in some format. And so I thought I'd focus on this a little bit, because this is a good example of how you actually use this. I think when I've looked at some of the work studies programs, there's a personality typing part in the process of trying to determine what sort of jobs you might want to do, but it doesn't really get used for anything after that. Kids get this info and then they don't necessarily do anything with it. So, so we took on this idea that maybe we could use personality typing, and maybe you would be familiar with Myers-Briggs testing. And so we have chosen a framework called Oz Identities. It's a local Sunshine Coast startup that takes the Myers-Briggs work and puts a new layer on that around 4 Australian animal narratives around the 4 personalities. So when you look at the Myers-Briggs work, there's 16 personalities based on a 4-letter type, from being an extrovert to an introvert, being sensing or having intuition, being thinking or feeling or judging or perceiving. And when you put all these together, you get 16 distinct personality types. It's all really great work, but it's pretty confusing. And so we found Oz Identities and went, this is amazing, because it's the same research, the same science, but it's far, far simpler than the actual Myers-Briggs work. So I thought I'd show you a little bit of that and the way that we use it. And I thought I'd throw in this little activity because it's such a good activity. Just to, I guess the first thing that we come up against when I talk about personality testing is a lot of educated, I don't agree with that. You shouldn't personality test young people because it puts them in a box. And we just put that up front and we say, this isn't putting anyone in a box. What this is doing is giving you some insight into how you tend to behave, not all the time, but most of the time, particularly under stress. And so the idea with personality testing in Oz Identities is that you are predominantly one animal. You're all animals some of the time, but you're one animal most of the time, especially when you're under stress. And so this activity is great because it shows you how having a perspective on how you behave and how others behave actually changes performance. So if I could get you to, and we'll do this really quickly, I'm going to give you 10 seconds to count from 1 to the highest number you can find in order as fast as you can, and we'll see where you get to. Are you ready? On your marks, get set, starting at 1, go. And stop. So I can't hear you, but I'm guessing that some of you maybe got up to 8, maybe 12. Some of you might have just been brilliant, especially if you've done this before. And you might have got a little higher. But for many, it actually can be quite confusing. Now, if you know how patterns arise from this or what pattern is used here, you can actually do this really, really easily. So I'm going to show you the pattern, and then that's going to give you some insight and perspective, and then you can do it again. So here's the pattern. You can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and every other number after that actually goes across these boxes. Now that you know that, I reckon you could probably get to, 30, 40, 50 if you did that activity again. And we don't have time to do that, so I'm not going to. But it's a great activity just to show that if you have perspective on something, especially around behavior and personality, it actually allows you to be a lot more effective in anything that you do. This is another great picture to talk about perspective. It's the exact same object in the center of the room. Some people who are looking at it from the left flashlight see a circle. Some people are looking at it from the right flashlight, see a square. Both of those are correct. It's just a matter of perspective. And so if you understand the person who's standing at the left flashlight, and you understand that even though you can't see the circle, they might be seeing a circle, you have to acknowledge that. Again, it's a great story to use to introduce personalities. And so Oz Identities and personality types, it's looking at patterns in human behavior, our natural way of doing things, and innate preferences. When we look at the Myers-Briggs personality testing, and I'm going to have to fly through this because we're going to run out of time, but you look at statements for extrovert and introvert, and you can do Oz Identities actually has a website. You can do different levels of tests based on your age. They get harder and more questions, but they basically give you your Myers-Briggs letters. If you're looking at sensing versus intuition, one of those statements is going to probably resonate with you more than the other. If you look at Thinking versus feeling. Again, one of those statements is going to resonate with you more than the other. And if you look at judging versus perceiving, one of those statements is going to resonate with you more than the other. And when you put those all together, you get 4 distinct personality types. And Oz Identities uses the eagle, the dolphin, the wombat, and the kangaroo. And you can see in those columns, the values and core needs are very different for those personalities, right? The dolphin is very much about relationships and feeling and wanting to please. So if you know a yes person, someone who always says yes to everything, chances are they're a dolphin predominantly. If you know someone who's really rigid about rules and routines and really has to know how things are going to go and what order they're going to go in, chances are they're predominantly a wombat. You know, most teachers in the profession are wombats. I can't remember the exact number, but it's like 75, 80% of teachers are wombats. Interesting. Kangaroos, they're really about the here and now. They got lots of energy, and so you can see some of their values and core needs are a bit different. So understanding some of this is actually really, really advantageous to young people. And so we go through a whole process of looking at the Oz Identities Myers-Briggs testing, and our students know what they are as a predominant type. They actually know what they are as a secondary type as well. So many of our students will be able to tell you if you ask them that they are an eagle wombat. Predominantly an eagle, especially under stress, but secondary to that, they're wombat. So they do still like routines and rules. The other piece to Oz Identities is communication, and this is really significant. If you understand how someone communicates, you actually can become a better team member and a better listener and a better communicator yourself, because you know what works for them, and then you basically can speak to that. So long story short, every conversation actually should involve all of the animal types in some regard. So dolphins tend to be red, kangaroos tend to be green, eagles and wombats can have blue and yellow, but every conversation actually should follow the same pattern. It's just for a dolphin, you'll spend more time on the red part as you start the conversation, because they love the relationship. They want to feel valued and they want someone to know, they want to feel like someone cares for them. Whereas if you're talking to a blue eagle, they actually have no interest in the relationship piece. So you can actually start there, move quickly to the next pieces, but you're always going to follow the same format. Our issue is that we often start down at the yellow, or sometimes we start at the blue. We can actually put people offside by doing that. So that's one of the frameworks that we use that I think career development officers would be really interested in. And so we use that to form teams. The best teams have all of the animal types. And so we do activities with students once they've been typed as their dominant animal. We put all the wombats together and give them a challenge. And they really quickly find out that's really hard to do because they don't actually get anywhere, because all the wombats, they want to come up with all the rules and regulations and routines, and they can't see the bigger picture. You put all the eagles together who are visionaries and they see the bigger picture, but they don't know the details. They don't get anywhere either. So you actually have to have, on the best team, you're going to find eagles, wombats, dolphins, and kangaroos all working together. And so we do all that work on the front end of our program for the first 8 weeks or so, and then we challenge teams to choose their groups based on your dominant animal type, your communication type, as well as your passions and interests. And so we see teams formed around those 3 things. And that's my timer. So the other framework we use is the Lean Startup Framework, and I'm not going to have a lot of time to go into this, but this is how you get an idea out of your brain and into something tangible. It really embraces that idea of failure and pivoting and iterating. And this is really, I think, the future that most of our young people are going to be experiencing. And so I thought I'd play this. This is from Astra Teller again. It's a really short clip, but it does really, I think, in some cases, give us insight into what future workplaces will actually be like and what our students are actually going to have to deal with. And if they don't have the skills and capabilities we're talking about, I wonder whether they'll be successful in these types of workplaces. So have a listen to this.
But I have a secret for you. The Moonshot Factory is a messy place. But rather than avoid the mess, pretend it's not there. We've tried to make that our strength. We spend most of our time breaking things and trying to prove that we're wrong. That's it. That's the secret. Run at all the hardest parts of the problem first. Get excited and cheer, hey, how are we going to kill our project today?
So again, it's looking at that celebrating failure piece, and we actually start once we launch, which we've just done, and teams are off and actually trying to make their ideas happen. We actually start each week with a failure conversation. We get together as a group of 9 and we go, who failed last week? Let's talk about it. Let's celebrate it. We also celebrate the successes, but if we can sort of look at what I think the future of work is going to be like, where it's going to be messy, you're going to have to navigate it yourself. You're going to have to self-manage. You're going to have to think critically, and you're going to have to try to hit the hardest parts of problems first. And again, we do that when kids come up with ideas and they then come up with solutions. We go, okay, kill it. I mean, this guy, Astra Teller, Google X, the Moonshot Factory was formerly Google X. So the whole self-driving car came from the work that Astra Teller has done with his teams. And so if this is what they're doing and they're innovating, then why shouldn't we be doing the same thing? And so we challenge kids, okay, kill your project today. What's going to kill it? What's the hardest thing? Run at that first. I think when we look at big company fails like Kodak and some of these huge companies that at one time were really successful, or huge companies that are innovating, they spend so much money and time coming up with innovations, and that's just not the way to do it anymore. They work on all the good parts of the project first, not the hardest parts first. And so I think we need to, take a page from Astro's book, and you can see his whole TEDx talk if you want to look for that. I think we're there. So if you want to learn more, you can actually go onto our website, DeLoreanProject.com.au. There's a couple of other presentations there that I've done. We've got an iBook. There's a podcast that we were featured in last year. And if you want more information about me, let me see if I can find my, sorry, I had all these other slides just in case. Yeah, so back to that first slide. How can we be part of the disruption to make education relevant? And if you want to contact us, those are our details. And again, Gail's our assistant head of primary, so I've kept her there because she's been my partner in crime. There you go.
Thank you so much, Rob. You've covered so much in such a short amount of time, and I'm sure people will have further questions. So those contact details are there. If it's a little bit blurry on the screen, the slides will be sent through to you, so you'll be able to access those more clearly. I've got lots of great messages coming through, Rob, just saying it's really exciting and inspiring and some really great concepts, and people have gained a lot from your presentation today. So I just want to thank you one last time for your time, and thank everybody for tuning in. And yeah, I look forward to hearing further stories of how far this can reach.
I didn't tell you to start with, but I'm actually in the back of my car doing this on a mobile phone. So there's the beauty of webinars and technology. Had a few changes today in my afternoon, and this was the solution. So thank you, Natasha, for supporting me in making that happen. And my hope is that you didn't notice.
You've done incredibly well to transmit from a car, and I've got no one noticed. And lots of thank yous. It was really well received, Rob, so thank you again.
Perfect. Great. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you all, and we'll see you next time.
Excellent. Thanks.